for your support. Brad's worked so hard. He's literally put up the signs himself earlier this year on this office. Chad's been outstanding. We appreciate the leadership we have here in the state. Thank you all for coming out. I want to start, though, for a moment being serious. I mean, I'll be serious as well throughout this conversation, but particularly serious because yesterday we lost 4 Marines down in Tennessee. We've got 1 Marine, 1 sailor, and 1 officer still down. One of those Marines, it was important, all 4 of them are important, but one of them was particularly, as I learned today, that one of them was from Burnett County, Wisconsin. He was a native of Wisconsin, and so it became even more personal for us, not only Wisconsin, but here in the Midwest. But we pause for just a moment and pray for the families of those 4 and the recovery of the 3 that I mentioned. Thank you. Just reminds you that as much as these political battles are intense, there's nothing more important than remembering those men and women who continue to sacrifice each and every day. So make sure you say a prayer for them tonight with your families. Well, it is great to be back in Iowa, although this is the first time since I made that announcement Brad was talking about on Monday night. So I get to say, I'm Scott Walker, I'm running for president, and I'm asking for your vote. It's great to be back in state. We're excited about where things are going on this campaign. Just in the few days we've been out in the road. We're glad to be here in Wisconsin. Excuse me, not Wisconsin. Boy, you can tell I slipped there from it. We're glad to be back in Iowa, and we're going to do something special. We're pulling a full Grassley. We're doing like Chuck Grassley and Joni Ernst and Terry Brand said. We're going around in an RV in all 99 counties across this great state. It's actually kind of fun. We started out in Davenport. We were Cedar Rapids. We're going to be in Council Bluffs tonight. I've got my wife, and they're probably actually smart enough. They already went inside to go cool off for a little bit. Oh, they're over there. My wife and my 2 sons, Matt and Alex, are here. We're having a fun time. It's a lot of fun for us in the RV, cruising around the great state of Iowa. And some of you may know this, but I was born, my dad was a preacher. He first called to be an associate pastor in Colorado Springs, Colorado. But in 1970, my dad was called to a church a little bit further northeast here in Plainfield, Iowa, population of 450. So we said, hee-haw, salute. And we're going to, on Sunday afternoon, we're going to be there with some of the folks that went to our church at a farm just outside of town. But it's great to be back in Iowa. I love being in this state, and just as much, I love America. And as I mentioned the other night when we talked about kicking off this campaign, I mentioned a couple of veterans, including one who was a neighbor of mine who was a World War I and II veteran, another one who was a Vietnam veteran, had a powerful influence on my life. And to all of you who've served and all of you who've supported the men and women who've served, thank you, because it reminded me then, as it does now, that America is a can-do kind of country. We're a can-do kind of country. Unfortunately, we got a government in Washington that can't quite keep the job, getting the job done. Yeah. I got news for you all. Help is on the way. It's not too late. We can turn this country around. We just need new, fresh leadership. Leadership from outside of Washington with big, bold ideas. The kind of leadership that actually gets things done. I'm proud to tell you that over in Wisconsin, in a blue state, we actually got things done. Since I've been governor, we took on the unions and we won. You see the book you got there, Unintimidated? They tried to intimidate us. They threw everything they could. They had 100,000 protesters. They had recalls. They had not only protests, but death threats and all sorts of other things. And in the end, we were not intimidated. We stood up for the hardworking people of our state, just like we're going to stand up for the hardworking people of America. We didn't just do that, we cut taxes by $2 billion. In fact, property taxes in our state are lower today than when we started. Since I've been governor, we passed lawsuit reform and regulatory reform. We defunded Planned Parenthood and passed pro-life legislation. We passed Castle Doctrine and concealed carry so law-abiding citizens can protect themselves, their families, and their property. And I'm proud to say in my state, you need a photo ID to vote in an election. If those reforms can work in a blue state like Wisconsin, they can work anywhere in America. As I travel this state, I travel this country, I got to tell you, the one thing I hear frequently is that is that people are tired of politicians telling them what they're against and who they're against. They're tired of people saying what they're against and who they're against. Instead, Americans want someone who tells them what they're for. They want to vote for something and for someone. So let me spend a couple minutes telling you what I'm for. I'm for reform. I'm for growth. I'm for safety. I'm for transferring power out of Washington and sending it back to our states where our hardworking people are. That's real reform. I'm for building a better economy that helps everyone live their piece of the American dream. That's pro-growth. I'm for protecting your children and grandchildren from radical Islamic terrorism and all the other threats in the world. That's true safety. You know, I'm for real reform that takes the power out of Washington. That's because, again, over in our state, what we did with our big, bold reforms was take the power out of the hands of the big government special interests and put it firmly into the hands of the hardworking people. We need to do that in America. But sadly, there's a lot of people in Washington who seem to measure success by how many people are dependent on the government. By how many people are dependent on the government. We should measure success by just the opposite. By how many people are no longer dependent on the government. We understand that true freedom and prosperity do not come from the mighty hand of the government. They come from empowering people to live their own lives and control their own destinies through the dignity that is born of work. Of work. I can still remember my first job as a kid. I washed dishes at the Countryside restaurant. And then I moved up to the big times in high school. I started flipping hamburgers at McDonald's. In fact, Paul Ryan, my buddy, was flipping burgers in McDonald's in Janesville. I was in Delavan. The only difference is his manager told him he had to flip burgers in the back because he didn't have the interpersonal skills to work the front cash register. True story. But I think about that as a kid growing up. I'm going to meet up with my parents later, and I think about the impact they had on me and my family. My dad was a small-town preacher. My mom was a part-time secretary and a bookkeeper at a local shop in town. My grandparents were farmers. We didn't have indoor plumbing until my mom went off to junior high school. My dad's dad was a machinist for 42 years at Barbara Coleman in Rockford, Illinois. My brother David and I look back at our life and we realize we didn't inherit fame or fortune from our family. What we got was the belief that if you work hard and you play by the rules, you can do and be anything you want. That's the American dream, and that is worth fighting for. That's what I want for your children and mine. I want to live the American dream, and part of that means a pro-growth. I'm for a pro-growth economic plan that helps individuals and families earn and save and achieve their piece of the American dream. It's a simple 5-point plan. First off, it starts with this. Let's repeal Obamacare once and for all and put patients and families back in charge of their health care. Next, let's rein in the out-of-control federal regulations that are like a wet blanket on our nation's economy. After that, let's put in place an all-the-above energy policy that allows us to use the abundance of what God has given us here in America and on this continent. You know, we're an energy-rich country. We can literally start fueling our nation's economic recovery. And one of the things we can do right off the bat is let's start by approving the Keystone Pipeline to give us one more option out there. And then let's help people get the skills and the education and the qualifications that they need to succeed. When we do that, we can help lift everyone up so they can find careers, not just jobs, that pay far more than the minimum wage. Let the other side talk about how low wages are going to be. Let's talk about how we lift everyone up in a way that helps everyone lift the American dream. I'm proud of the reforms we did to public education in our state. Our schools are better because of it. And I'm proud of the fact that we gave more families quality choices in education because I trust parents to make the right decision for their children. You see, I want every child, regardless of background, regardless of what their parents do for a living, every child should have access to a great education, be it at a traditional public or a charter or a choice or a virtual or a homeschool environment. Every child deserves access to a great education. And going forward, I believe in high standards. But I think those standards should be set at the local level. No Common Core, no nationwide school board. We need to take power and money out of Washington and send it back to our states and back to our schools where it's more effective, more efficient, and more accountable to the American taxpayers out there. And thinking about that, I always like to make sure I got $1 in my pocket because it's a great reminder. Where would you rather spend this dollar? Would you rather send it to Washington or would you rather send it to your kid's school? I'd rather spend it in your child's school, and that's what we're talking about. And when it comes to money, the last thing in our pro-economic plan that I'm for is about lowering the burden on hardworking taxpayers so you can keep more of your money. I'm proud of what we did in Wisconsin. I know if we can lower taxes by $2 billion in Wisconsin, the state that unfortunately was the founding state for the state income tax back in 1911. If we can lower taxes like that in Wisconsin, we can do it in Washington. And sometimes people wonder why I focus so much attention on lowering the tax burden. It's simple. Some of you may have heard, I like to tell this story. My wife and I, we kind of like to shop at a place called Kohl's. And over the years, I've learned, Jimmy Fallon has a little fun with me on this one. Some of you may have saw this the other day because I like to tell this story because it tells it like it is. I like to shop at Kohl's. And I've learned over the years, if you're going to buy a shirt that was $29.99, you go to the rack that's marked down to $19.99. And then you go up to the front cash register and you take that, that flyer from the insert on Sunday's newspaper with the little scratch off. Or maybe if you remember, if I get back at home and I get the flyer we get in the mail that has it directed to Tonette and I, and we get the 15 or the 20% off, or if we're really lucky, the 30% off. That's like the golden ticket. And then we take that up to the cash register, and about the time she's ringing us all up, my wife reaches into her purse and she pulls out some of that Kohl's cash. And next thing you know, they're paying us to buy the shirt, right? Well, it feels like it. So how does a company like that make money? They make it off of volume, right? You see, they could charge you a higher price, and a few of you could afford it. They could lower the price, broaden the base, and increase the volume that they make off of that product. Years ago, for me, I feel the same way when it comes to your money, the taxpayers' money. I think instead of the government charging the higher rates, we could lower the rates, broaden the base, and increase the volume of people participating in our nation's economy. Years ago, under Ronald Reagan, that worked successfully. We called it the Laffer curve. Today, I call it the Kohl's curve because I believe you can spend your money far better than the federal government. And when we do that, it'll help improve the economy. The last thing I want to tell you about is what we're for, though, is to live, to prosper. To prosper, we need to live in a more a safe and a stable country and a safe and stable world. That's why I'm for true safety. You see, the commander-in-chief has a sacred responsibility, a sacred duty to protect the American people. In my lifetime, the best president when it comes to that, national security and foreign policy, was a governor from California. Under his leadership, we rebuilt the military. We stood up for our allies. We stood up against our enemies. And without apology, we stood for American values. And because of it, we lived in one of the most peaceful times in modern American history. Sadly, under the Obama-Clinton doctrine, America is leading from behind. And that has us headed towards a disaster. You got a president who drew a line in the sand and allowed it to be crossed. A president who called ISIS the JV squad, Yemen a success story, and Iran a place we can do business with. Think about that. Iran. I still remember as a kid tying ribbons around the tree in front of our house during the 444 days that Iran held 52 Americans hostage. Iran is not a place we should be doing business with. As your president, I will terminate the bad deal with Iran, reimpose the sanctions, and encourage our allies to do the same. And this president earlier this year proclaimed that the greatest threat to future generations is climate change. Well, Mr. President, I respectfully disagree. The greatest threat to future generations is radical Islamic terrorism, and we need to do something about that. We can start by lifting the political restrictions that we've imposed, this administration has imposed on our men and women in uniform who are already in Iraq. to free them up so they can help our Kurd and Sunni allies actually reclaim the territory taken by ISIS. We can do that with what we have there and the talent that we have here. Along with that, we need to acknowledge that Israel is an ally and start treating Israel like an ally. We need to stop the aggression of Russia into sovereign nations. You see, Putin believes in what Lenin once said, that you probe with bayonets. If you find mush, you push. If you find steel, you stop. Under Obama and Clinton, Putin has found plenty of mush over the last several years. The United States needs a foreign policy that will put steel in front of our enemies. We need to secure our borders, enforce our laws, and go forward with legal immigration that puts a priority on American working families and their wages in a way that will improve our economy. And then we need to make sure that we honor our men and women in uniform by giving them the resources they need to keep us safe, not only abroad, but even more after yesterday, giving them the ability to protect themselves on American soil. And then when they return home, we need to give them the quality and timely health care they deserve. But the best way to honor them, is by fighting to win. You see, this is important because our goal should be peace. Our goal should be peace through strength. But there will be times when America must fight. And if we must, Americans fight to win.
Yeah.
The rest of the world must know that there is no greater friend and no worse enemy than the United States of America. So there are some pretty big challenges on the horizon for the next president. Here with our finances, with our economy, certainly our place in the world, we got some big challenges out there. But you know what? I'm an optimist. I believe in America. I love America. I think you love America, or you wouldn't be out here right now in this heat like it is, right? You guys are pretty smart on this side of the shade, by the way. I don't know why they didn't put the stage over there. That would have made a whole lot more sense for me, right? I just sweat 15 pounds off up here, but I'm working hard for you, and I'm going to keep working hard for you. But I got to tell you, for me, it's simple. People ask me all the time, why are you running? I got two simple reasons. I introduced them before. They're Matt and Alex. They're the reason why Tonette and I decided to run for governor so many years ago, even though our state hadn't gone Republican for president since 1984. They're the reason why we stood up against 100,000 protesters and against the death threats and the pushback and the recall and the re-elect and all those other things. Because, you know, if it had just been about a title, it wouldn't have been worth it. It would have been time to back away. But because I knew I wanted my sons and all the others like them to grow up in a state even greater than the one I grew up in, it was worth it. I got to tell you now, more than ever, for me, I want Matt and Alex and every other son and daughter, grandson and granddaughter, niece and nephew, and those yet to be born to grow up in a country even greater than the one we inherited. With your help here in Iowa and across America, that's exactly what we can do. We can stand up and fight and win for America, and when we do, we'll make it better, not just for today, but for future generations. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for withstanding the heat. May God bless you. May God bless our military, and may God continue to bless the United States of America.